You're afraid to be corny. I was born on the cob.
Hey there, kids, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, hoping that you are having a great day. And in today's video, we are going to be sitting back, relaxing, and having a wonderful conversation about bulk. Specifically, I'd like this to be my all-in-one starter video for all intents and purposes. The video I can point to when someone asks, what is bulk? How do I work with bulk? Is bulk worth it? This is kind of my general all catch-all for the bulk topic. I've covered it several times on the channel already. I've made a few videos about working with bulk, for instance. And you'd be surprised how many people are out there who just either A, have no idea that you can make money selling bulk, or B, question whether it's even worth their time. And, in some ways, bulk can be very profitable. And in other ways, it can be mind-numbingly tedious to work with. So in this video, I would just like to tackle the basics of this particular corner of the TCG market and help you guys get a better understanding of how to start working with bulk, as well as some things just to keep in mind. So with all of that said, first things first, what is bulk? It varies by definition from person to person, but on average, bulk cards, regardless of the card game they come from, are typically cards below a certain price threshold that the average collector, investor, or store wouldn't consider worth stocking or sifting through. Whether it's putting it on inventory live because so few people want it and it's worth so little, or just because there's so much of it that it's in general kind of seen as a hassle to go through. Bulk is, by its very nature, a large pile to deal with, usually. There's very rarely a bulk pile of like 20 cards. Usually when you're dealing with bulk cards, it's, in the form of hundreds or even thousands, very often. So, if you've never dealt with bulk before, and you're curious to start, you might ask yourself, A, is it even worth it to sift through bulk? The answer to that question is yes. It can be very worth it if you have the time and patience to sit there and organize bulk. You can find that as long as you are on top of things, you can make quite a pretty penny. In fact, the vast majority of my TCG player sales are through bulk cards, and I'm comfortable with where I am on the platform right now. The second question you might ask yourself is, how do I source my bulk? And there are many ways to acquire bulk. I'm going to be completely honest. There are three major ways, all right? There is just accumulating it naturally. If you are a fan of any given card game, and you spend a lot of money on a given card game, opening boxes, cracking packs, building decks, disassembling decks, just over time, you're going to accumulate a lot of bulk for yourself just kind of naturally. So the first way most people get bulk is just by organically having it, honestly. The second way you can get bulk is to just kind of buy it off of friends or people online. There are a lot of people who have accumulated thousands of extra cards that they never have any intention of playing with or doing anything with. And most people who accumulate these cards are willing to part with them for a pretty penny. You're going to find, most of the time, there are various price points for bulk. You're going to see different prices online from various stores, various private buyers, marketplaces, etc. But in general, if you're looking out there to buy bulk, what I recommend you do is you would price it by game, basically. Typically, bulk is bought in the thousands, so you would buy it at $5 a thousand if you were buying, say, Magic the Gathering or Flesh and Blood. And you change how much you're paying for bulk based on various circumstances, how much you want the card game bulk, for instance, how much you have in stock, how easy is it to sell. There's a lot of things to take into consideration because bulk from, let's say, Lorcana is not going to be necessarily as desirable as bulk from Pokemon, just to put it out there. So you might be willing to pay less for Lorcana than you would for bulk Pokemon of the same amount, which is just something to keep in mind. For instance, as an example, I offer $2 1,000 right now for a Korra bulk, which is a TCG that I do sell, and I do buy bulk for it. It just doesn't sell very well, and what I buy tends to just kind of sit. Meanwhile, for the OG Wizards of the Coast era Neopets TCG, I offer $15 per 1,000 for that, just because sourcing it is a pain, and people rarely want to part with it. And I really want some. I really want that a lot. So that's just the second way, is just buying it either online or from people in your area. The third way you can get started, at least with bulk, is ask around. There's a lot of people who don't even want to sell it. They just want to get it off their hands because they have so many. You'll find traveling around that there are even stores that are willing to offload a few thousand cards on you, either for very little or nothing at all. You know, if you build a repertoire with the stores in your area and you get to know them and you say, hey man, I just want to know, do you have bulk back there that you just don't want anymore? They might just end up handing it off to you, either for a trade or for some, just a small amount of cash. It's worked plenty of times in the past, and you'll find that more often than not, stores have bulk they don't want. You'd be surprised how often it comes up. Second off, now that you have bulk in hand and you have a giant pile of cards, what do you do with it? Well, you will find most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, bulk you pick up is unsorted. This can be a big pain if it is a mixed bag. Various card games are slashed in the bulk, which I'm always uncomfortable with, but it happens and you just got to deal with it. So step one is to organize it by game. You know, take all the bulk, separate it. Magic cards go into one pile, Pokemon goes in another pile, Yu-Gi-Oh goes in the third pile. Once that is done, you go to each of those game piles and you organize them by set. This is important for step 3, because step 3 is to organize every card in the respective sets by their set order, alphabetically speaking. Because in step 4, the final step, ideally, the second to last step actually, sorry I misspoke. In the second to last step, you're adding all of those cards to TCG Player. And I have found personally that the easiest way to do so is just to load up the set on TCG Player, go down the list alphabetically, and add in your numbers. Typically, when it comes to bulk, most of the time, a few extra tips, you will find if a card is bulk, 15 cents, 10 cents, 25 cents. Once it's at that price point, you're going to find that it's relatively easy to sell it if you keep all of your bulk at one flat price. I price my bulk on TCG Player at around 15 cents per card, and those sell. So cards that have a market price of 5 cents, cards that have a market price of 10 cents. If you put them at 15 cents or whatever your floor is, whatever you need to put it at to make at least a penny or two off the transaction, you'll find that more often than not, people who are buying these bulk cards aren't going to sweat 5 or so cents here or there. They just want the card. They're not really too fussy about it. So you'll find if most of your cards are priced at the same point, they're going to sell for that point, more or less. If people are willing to buy that card, they're willing to pay 15 cents for it, right? Thing 2 to consider, if you have damaged bulk, don't bother. It's rarely worth it to buying and selling damaged cards in general on TCG Player is usually a hassle. I have found that damaged conditions, non-near mint conditions, can always be a hassle to deal with. And when it comes to the lowest possible ladder of cards, damaged bulk, it's usually not even worth it to deal with it. So if you buy a huge collection and most of it's damaged, oh well, it is what it is. You can move on to other things with that, either throwing it out or donating it to charity. Because I assure you, there are school programs and hospitals that will take that stuff off your hands. Another thing, to keep in mind when you're dealing with bulk is time investment. And this is the one that people tend to overlook. Once you start dealing with a lot of bulk, we're talking hundreds of thousands. Okay, we're talking this crap back here. Once you're dealing with more than just a few thousand cards, the time starts to add up really quickly. And you have to decide whether or not you have the patience to deal with that. And I'd recommend that you decide whether or not you have the patience before you get too invested. And by that I mean, don't acquire an absurd amount of bulk all at once. Buy a few thousand here or there. Buy 2,000 Flesh and Blood cards, 1,000 Yu-Gi-Oh cards, 1,000 Pokemon bulk, whatever. Take it in small chunks. See if you're comfortable with sitting there for potentially hours, sifting through cards, organizing everything, and making sure everything looks good for your inventory. Because I guarantee, like a serious guarantee here, if you buy 50,000 bulk cards all at once just because you think that you are gonna start off with a strong, big inventory, and it turns out that you are not the kind of person who has that kind of patience, you will deeply regret it when the time comes to actually sift through and sort all that stuff. I have seen it happen plenty of times where someone who thinks that, oh, I have the patience just to sit there on my chair for 6 hours a day, and then the time comes, and no, they do not have that patience. They are not ready. They do not see themselves having a bulky career. The final thing I want to say that you should consider is you'll find it's easier to sift through and sort through bulk if there's something else going on in the background. You know, sitting there in silence is never fun. But in addition to like the various music or videos or whatever you can be playing while you're sifting through bulk, something to keep in mind is that not all bulk is worthless, okay? And you can multitask while you're organizing. So if you are a Yu-Gi-Oh player, for instance, you can go through your bulk, and while you're sorting through it, just decide whether or not there's any cards you see that can go in a deck. I know that this can seem like an obvious thing, but you'd be surprised how many people will say, you know, man, I was sorting through my bulk just the other day, and I saw this card that I need for this deck, or I saw a card that I might want to play in this other deck. When you're going through bulk, and it's bulk, never be afraid to pull out cards for yourself. I know that there's a lot of mindset, grindset, or grindset, mindset, there we go, that way, of just trying to maximize your value, but just because you're trying to build up an inventory doesn't mean you have to sell every single card that comes your way. You will find enjoyment in the games you play if you take the time to, you know, actually build the decks that you might be interested in playing. I'm not saying, you know, go through all the bulk and build decks out of everything you buy, but, you know, just keep an eye out for cards that might be playable, might be interesting, etc. You know, if there's a solemn judgment that comes through in a Yu-Gi-Oh bulk collection and you don't have one in a deck, pull it aside. You might find some use for it down the road. That happens a lot, actually. Really cool Yu-Gi-Oh staples come through a lot because Yu-Gi-Oh reprints everything. And you'd be surprised how many go-to Netison decks you can build on a bulk budget, so to speak. But at the end of the day, bulk is a serious time investment. And while it can be very profitable, very lucrative, especially when there's a mistake. You know, if someone sells you a bulk collection and then there's a Force of Will in there, or a Dual Land, you know, those mythical garage sale bulk collections. Now, you can make money selling bulk even without those mysterious, random, definitely real mishaps, right? If you have the patience for it, it can be very fun, very lucrative. And if you don't have the patience for it, there's no shame in that, because there's plenty of ways to make money in the world of trading card games. Bulk is just one avenue, and it's not for everyone. All those things considered, if it's something you feel up to doing, give it a try, because, again, it can be very worthwhile. But that's all I have for you kids today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share, and subscribe. I'd appreciate it so much if you do. Leave a comment down below. Do you think bulk is worth it? Do you think bulk is silly? Do you think your Uncle Frank is slightly fatter today than usual. I'm curious to know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.